For more on President Biden and former President Trump's visits to the border this week, we're joined by Democratic Congressman from California, a member of the House Foreign Affairs and Intelligence Committee, Bera. Congressman, thank you so much for giving us some time on this Saturday afternoon. We really appreciate it. This young woman, Laken Riley, who has now been laid to rest by her grieving family and friends, has also raised the question of sanctuary cities all across the country and whether or not law enforcement in these areas, if there should be a change. And a lot of critique of this, that the man accused in this murder could have been picked up at some point, possibly could have been deported during one of his prior interactions with law enforcement. Your thoughts as this becomes really a central issue, and sadly, Laken Riley right at the center of this. Your thoughts?
Molly, thanks for having me on. And our hearts go out to Lincoln's parents and the tragic loss of anyone who's been murdered in this manner. We've got to deal with this, and how I'm thinking about it, and how I think some of my colleagues are thinking about it, is separate legal immigration as well as the immigration system from what we're seeing at our borders, which does seem to be more of a national security issue. And I think you'll come up with different solutions for this. I do think we need to do a border bill. I think we need to address that issue, and then we need to address the chronic influx of folks that are showing up on the border.
One other thing to highlight, because you are a congressman from California, now we've seen an enormous influx shifting there to the San Diego area. And that city on the border is really struggling to handle that recent influx. There were some migrant shelters that were open. Now the money has run out. There are hundreds and perhaps even more than 1,000 people going to bus stations there in the city. Your thoughts on this shift and how California has become a little bit more of the epicenter that we saw Texas being most recently?
Yeah, right now, ground zero is Arizona and California, because it really has shifted westward. Again, I would say, there is a real urgency to address what we're seeing on the southern border. And the reality is it's going to get worse before it gets better. I was in Europe last week, and Europe has seen that influx of migrants over the past decade. What you're seeing in the global south with climate change, with instability, with crime, it's a different sort of migrant that is coming up to the border. Whereas a decade, 2 decades ago, you'd see folks that were coming here for work, but they'd go back and forth over the border. It wasn't the same issue that we see today.
I think it's interesting where you were saying there needs to be two issues. There's the border issue, and then migrants all across the country and some policy issues there. What we're seeing in San Diego is that people are coming across the border. There's the border impact, potentially. But then they do disperse and go all across the country. And now we're seeing cities as far away as Boston struggling to find housing for migrants. So your thoughts on what can be done between those two separate points that you're talking about?
I think it's compounding an issue. We see it here in Sacramento, my hometown, where we already have a tremendous homeless challenge. And then this is dropped on top of that. You hear Eric Adams talk about it in New York. You hear the mayor of Chicago talk about it. So again, I think we've got to come up with a long-term solution. I think, and it's not going to be an easy solution. It's going to take Democrats and Republicans coming together to do this. But probably have to keep folks closer to the border. If it's setting up camps where you can process folks, treat them as human beings. But again, this problem is not going to get better. It's going to get worse because you see that instability in the global south.
Yeah, and quickly there were these dueling visits, the president, the former president down there on the border, the current president, Joe Biden, pointing at former President Trump and saying, you need to do more to bring Congress on board. But does the president, Joe Biden, need to do more? Can he do more? We've seen executive orders in the past that Trump had in place that Biden rolled back. Could Biden be doing more?
I think President Biden is thinking about executive orders. I certainly think when we hear the State of the Union this coming week, he's going to have to address the border, and perhaps you'll see some announcements there. And I think what President Biden is alluding to is there was a bipartisan bill that was a tough negotiation in the Senate. I think it's a good bill. It's not the end of this, but it is a good start. It gets needed resources to our border and customs folks down there. And we also have a fentanyl crisis there. We've got to have better scanning and stop fentanyl at the border.
All right. Congressman Bera, a little foreshadowing for us. We appreciate that. And thank you for giving us your time on this Saturday afternoon. We appreciate it.
Great. Thank you. Be well.
Mike?
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.